This short history of my life. Paul Wenzel Thompson, Jr. I was born in 1948 on December the 31st. That was a good year for me. I was born to Paul Wenzel Thompson, Sr. and Irene Marie Kinney. He was a war veteran. They both came from Fulton, Missouri. And it was in the county of what they call Kingdom of Callaway County. Now, as I go back, I would like to talk about Irene. I'm very proud of Irene Marie Kinney. Her father was named Stanley Finley, but her grandmother was named Olivia Kinney, so she took her grandmother's last name. Reason I'm very proud of Irene is, and we'll find that this is happening throughout a little time, her high school diploma states that she is Irene Marie Kinney, and she went to Lincoln University Laboratory High School. This was after she had children. She further went to Lincoln University to further her education. We'll find that in our families that a lot of the mothers got their full degree after their children were in school and away from home. So this is my mother. She waited for my dad after he got out of the service. And that's when they began to have a family. And part of that family was Sandra Paulette Thompson, now named Johns, myself, Paul Thompson Jr., Mona Renee Thompson, and Michael Brad Thompson. Those are my two younger siblings. And I had to talk a little bit about her because I was real surprised when we...
Let me fix that for you. We'll cut.
No.
We'll cut. Don't worry. Just do a quick edit there.
I was really proud of her getting her diploma. And I had a picture of where they both graduated in the 8th grade. Now, Paul Thompson, Sr., only got an 8th grade education. He had to help his mother, since their father had passed away, help her sort of survive. So that's what happened to some of the men. In fact, I'll explain that. That's what happened to me later about my education. Now, these are my children. I was married to Jacqueline Douthert, down Jacqueline Bernice Thompson. And we had 4 children. Luongo Thompson, now Luongo James, Paul Thompson III, Lorenco Marquez, and Clifton Jamal Thompson. So I wanted to point that out, that we did have, which 2 are still living today. And as we go back, I told you about her family. So her grandmother was Olivia Cave Kinney. My father's mother was Amanda Thompson.
Hold on for a second.
Okay.
I'll have to redo that last part because the machine went on and it ruins the audio. Okay, it's off. Just gonna do an audio check.
Yep.
I'm gonna have people beeping.
That's fine.
long ago did the air conditioning turn on?
For that minute?
Yeah.
That's fine. We can just, you want to wait till it goes up? How long does it take to go up?
Just a few more seconds. Yeah, just give it a second. You take a drink or a break. I'm trying to think, is there any other questions I should ask or?
Did you bring the tea upstairs or no? That's fine.
Yeah, I brought the teas right there. Let me see.
It just went.
So let you just continue on with.
It just went off.
Yeah.
So as we get into family history, we did have a family reunion. Now my mother's family, they've been going over 70 years. And her grandmother was Alice Brown Gross. Alice Brown Gross and Emma Brown Ray had the reunions at their place in what they call Little Kansas City, which is the north part of Fulton before you get to the highway. Mainly it was black people living there. And so after enjoying those, and I am past president of the Brown Gross reunion, I decided, because my father took me around to all his families, and we enjoyed visiting those families. So probably they didn't need to have a reunion because they were all located close together and they just socialized all the time. My father's brother, Fred and James, were our fishing buddies. My mother's cousin, Aunt Catherine's son, Russell Palmer, he was our hunting buddy. So I wanted to put that out there to him and acknowledge that I enjoyed those times. Well, I got to tell this real quick. My dad, Fred, and James, we were all hunting south of Jeff City. It's some part of the Ozarks. And I caught a fish. Except for I really didn't catch the fish. The fish caught me. Now, the reason I say that, this fish is on the endangered species fish now, a spoonbill. We didn't see him for it, but I got all my fishing equipment where somebody has lost it off the bank. So I get his fishing equipment whenever I found some. And I was about to lose this fishing equipment to this fish because he's pulling me in and taking my fishing pole and everything with him. So I'm running down the side of the bank because I'm not going in the water. And I'm screaming for help. And so they sort of helped me. And then finally my dad got there and helped pull the fish in. The fish was probably over 4 feet tall. It was taller than I was. So that's the biggest fish I caught in my life.
How old are you?
I was probably about 9 or 10. Okay. I was very young at the time, but I couldn't pull the fish in. The fish was stronger than I was. And so I remember that. And I remember one other story when we were fishing on the banks. I slipped off the bank on a muddy bank and slipped into the water. And I'm flashing and screaming, water. And my father looked over me and said, "Son, stand up." And I stood up, and the water was only there. Okay, but it's an experience. But it was muddy at the time, and it was slippery. So like gumbo mud. When you get in gumbo mud, it just slippery and you can't get out of it. But anyway, that was another day. I got to remember one other time we were out and we gathered our greens. When we snapping greens off and stuff, I was ahead of my wife, Jacqueline, and she stopped. She didn't scream, but she just said, "Snake." I said, "I don't see no snake." She said, "The snake, you stepped over the snake." and the snake went through your legs. And she said, it was a big snake. And so we didn't hunt at that spot anymore for greens. I tell you, okay. Now, I got to tell you about my dad, okay. I always thought, well, maybe we weren't the best at technology and stuff like that. But when I look back now and I'm as an adult, he embraced technology. But the technology he embraced was the fact of, well, we went, in my time, we went from an ice box to a refrigerator. And my mother got the first side-by-side refrigerator that I've ever seen. Now, they wasn't really a big one like you see today, but it was a nice size refrigerator, frost-free. And so we got away from ice boxes and moved to a refrigerator. We also moved from radio, and we used to take naps by the radio and listen to Bear Rabbit and different things on the radio and fall asleep by it. Later, we went to television. And I remember, since we weren't rich, but we never knew that we were poor, okay, that they decided that each child should have a big Christmas. So I don't know what Sandra's was, but I knew mine was, I was sort of studious. So mine was a Smith & Corona typewriter because I like to type. The year after that, Mona got hers. She got a television. I said, whoa, she asked for a television? Okay, and I don't remember what Mike was. But I do remember one Christmas, well, maybe mine, besides that, was a sled. You know, we lived across from the school. And that was the first house he bought, even though we lived other places before that. But that was the first house he bought, right across from the school. And we still own that property today. And better cut it.
Okay, pause. The music.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Mm.
Don't need that in there. That happens when you're downtown sometimes. Is the thing working?
It's fine.
Ready?
Okay. Yeah, everything's good.
Okay. So I remember one Christmas, I asked for a sled, and I got a sled. However, that Christmas, there was no snow.
Oh,
We're out playing football in our T-shirts at the schoolyard, okay, Christmas. So that was one of the warm years. So sometimes you can't predict what's going to happen.
yeah, especially down in Missouri.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot warmer. Than up
Yeah,
there.
but now going through high school, I used to shovel snow, and people used to pay me with silver dollars. And I wish I'd kept some of those old silver dollars today. But I used it for a good cause. I was on a date, prom, and we all were together, buddies of mine. And so we were coming up short for the meal that we were coming, so I used the silver dollars for the meal. So it went to a good purpose. And by that time, my father had bought, now here come the technology. We went from a sycamore to a lawnmower, okay? So the lawnmower, he gave me my first can of gas, and he gave me the lawnmower, and he says, all you have to do is keep my grass cut, then you can take it out and make money with this. I made enough money that I bought my first car
Oh, wow.
with that money.
How much did you raise?
Well, put it this way. Every Memorial Day, people took pride. Now, Callaway County was unusual in Missouri because it used to be a slave state, and I had a certificate of when my great-grandfather got released from being a slave, became a free man, okay? when they abolished slavery in Missouri. So black people owned the property, okay, and everybody took pride in their yards. So every Memorial Day, I had tons of clients. Once they found out that I had a lawnmower and I was working for it, all my relatives had me cut their grass. Neighbors had me cut their grass, okay? And then come 4th of July, they did it all again. Everybody had to have it, especially on the holidays. Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. They wanted to look spiffy. Nobody wanted their yards to look bad. So I was really sticking with money. And
So
so
how much did the car cost?
the car cost back then, it was a Plymouth, red, white Plymouth, no, white and green Plymouth, $300.
$300?
It was
I
used.
bet
It
you
wasn't.
that thing's 100 times, not even 100 times worth that now.
Yeah. So, time I became a junior, people were riding with me instead of me riding with other people. And of course, we had practice, you know. But gas was 29 cents a gallon back then.
Wow.
And
What year was this?
that was 65 or 66.
Oh, okay.
And so, anyway, after taking people home, I would get up at the top of the hill. And I said, I'm going to save gas. I'm going to put the car in neutral and roll down the hill and see how far I can roll with the engine off. And I went probably over a mile because Westminster College was below us, and I would go all the way down to Westminster College, past our house and Westminster College. Of course, yeah, how much gas did I save? Had to turn the engine back on and get home. but it was a fun thing to do. Now, his parents was Amanda Lambert Thompson. She married Tonty Thompson. Tonty Thompson is a Chickasaw Indian. They're out of Oklahoma. Now, my grandmother, Amanda Lambert Thompson, was part Cheyenne Arapaho. Now, when we go back to her mother was Roberta Ramsey Lambert. Okay, and her mother was Mary Davis. She was Cheyenne Arapaho. So where we get our light color from is the Cheyenne Arapahos and Chickasaw. Now this is my grandmother's granddaughter, and she would have dressed like her. I don't have a picture of my third great grandmother, but she would have looked like her granddaughter here. And here you see her granddaughter dressing like an Indian. Now, my grandmother, this piece of paper I'm holding says she has property down on the reservation, on the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe. And she married Ramsey. Now, Ramsey is the person that got free, moved from Virginia to Missouri. And I call it the land between the rivers because Callaway County is between the Mississippi and the Missouri River. So it's very fertile land, good hunting land too. So, but back in the 1880s, like 1893, he was released and got his freedom from slavery. Now I'm going to read. and his name was Jerry Ramsey. Well, I can't read this, but the first Christian church in Missouri, he worked for them as a janitor. Now, we belong to the second Christian church. The second Christian church was basically for colored people. First Christian church was white, second Christian church was colored. Now, the second Christian church in Fulton, even though, see, I lost contact when I went to college because they had changed their name to Disciples of Christ. So the Christian church is now the Disciples of Christ. But I didn't know that. I was looking for a second Christian church, no second Christian church. Okay? And that's really not turned over to Baptists. Okay? But
What denomination was Second Christian Church? Because you said you changed to Baptist, right? What was the first denomination that you were in?
Christian church.
Christian Church? Is the denomination?
Denomination, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now it's called the Disciples of Christ.
Okay.
Christian Church. Okay, so they had changed their name. So now they all go under that name, except for people who had the historic of the church been for hundreds of years back in the time. So, and a lot of our families went to that and grew up there. Now they spread out just like the rest of our family, spreading to different states and everything. Now, and I want to mention about one of my oldest relatives that I know of is Rosalind McBride, which is Rosalind Ford now. Well, it's Rosalind Henderson McBride. She got divorced and now she's Rosalind Ford. And she lived up in Muskegon, Michigan. And that's how my two sisters ended up in Muskegon, Michigan. Now, Rosalind has in her family probably 30 great grandkids, probably 30 grandkids and great grandkids, okay, out of her family. So she has half of all the relatives in the family. Now she's living in Detroit right now, and I'm hoping that Danasa can meet her someday. Now, you learned about him, Jerry Ramsey. I have you read this later about him.
Yeah, I can do the audio.
Okay.
I was thinking what I could do is scan those while we're here.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, like, edit the video and then put each of those things that you held up.
Yes, and what was really important to me, and I am getting static, but I have held the family together since 2001 because I used to play with all my cousins. But now that everybody's scattered out, we need a reunion to bring them together. We have family out west, over around north of San Francisco, and on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. We have family in Indianapolis. We have family in Michigan, besides being in Fulton. Okay. Now my mother's family, some of them are in Texas now. So we're scattered all over the nation. I graduated from high school in 1966. I went to a school in Northeast. Well, I wrestled. I chose not to go to Southeast Missouri State, which I had a scholarship to go to. I had a working scholarship to go to Missouri. And one of my buddies, high school buddies that I was in band with, said, come on up to Kirksville, Northeast Missouri State, which is now called Truman State because of an endowment, said they have a good wrestling team up there. So I went up there, wrestled. And so my first year, I wrestled junior varsity. My first year, I wrestled junior varsity. And my second year, the third year, I wrestled, went up against MU after going there. So my coach thought I did a real good job against, even though I lost, I did a real good job against Missouri. But then I was in science. I love science. I got an opportunity because one of my professors, and I think it was Dr. Bell, my biology teacher, says, why don't you apply for med school? So I applied for med school and I got in. So I went to the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. And after doing my biochemistry and other chemistries, I transferred now here's what you got to find out sometime. You got to find out what system they're under. But I transferred it back because I knew I should have had enough credits to get, and they said I did. Except for my credits transferred back at C, 30 hours of C instead of B or A. So, but it was enough to get my degree. So I got my BS degree in 1973 from Kirksville, Northeast Missouri State, which later became Truman. My family got to enjoy, my father got to enjoy me seeing that, and they all came up for the graduation, and we had a picnic. And there is a film where we was out at the big lake. We was just having a picnic or something on the shore. And so by that time, LaWanda James and Paul III were born, and you could see them playing in that film. Later that year, I was called home for my dad's brother's funeral. He was 2 years younger than my dad. He was 52. At that funeral, I found out that my dad had cancer. And so he died that same year. And so I was back and forth to Fulton, back and forth, trying to help my mother. And so that ended my education too, at the time. As I look back at that, I probably could have told them what was going on with me, but I did not tell them that I needed to lay out a semester or so to help my mother. And so I did not get my degree. 3 years, I only needed one more year, and I could have had my degree as a DO. So I came to Des Moines, looked for a job, and I got a job at Sears. So while I was working at Sears, I thought that maybe I would go back and continue my education. And I got accepted at the osteopathic school up here. However, the dean of the administration, or dean of the school, rescinded my acceptance. And if I had thought about that, I should have took him to court or told him to see my lawyer. But, you're young. I was young then too, plus 7 years of school. I don't know if I was committed anymore, to school at that point. But I always say, if you shoot high and you fall, you don't fall too far. And so I had accumulated almost a $500,000 in working for Sears. However, when 9/11 came around and I didn't move the money, zip, it was gone. But I had enough money to save my house, which I still have. And that goes back to talking about, I formed a LLC corporation in Missouri for my dad's house. And so we still hold that house today. But we had a house that my mother had inherited, and also she had a house that Olivia Cave, which goes by Libby, her house, which is her dad's house and her grandmother's house, we had that. But she wanted to sell it, so I said, well, it's hers to sell, you know. So if she wants to sell it, she can sell it. We paid more in taxes than we got out of it. So you got to be careful how you sell the house. And that comes to the point that I would like for everybody to rethink their major. And the reason I want everybody to rethink their major, I had an article said, and that was here in Des Moines, one of the superintendents, we need a temporary superintendent, and if you go with get a principal, and then go move on to, which is administration, school administration, business administration. I don't know which major get you there, but this interim superintendent, $260,000 salary, and his total package came to $360,000 after his benefits and things that they were paying for. So I'm putting that out there. Education is still one of the good paths. Now, we have people that have been teachers, and teachers pay you from $30,000 to $40,000 if you got a good position. But school administration pays you even more, okay? And I got one granddaughter that don't want to take orders from nobody. And maybe she should be the boss. And that's what superintendents are. They're the boss. So if you want to be the boss and you want to get paid for being the boss, school administration is one of the paths to take. I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. So, Lee, do you want to start this over? Because I want to go to part 2.
That's fine. It was at 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, so now we're going to do part 2, where I'm going to ask, some questions, because I want to kind of go linear. But, so you already said when and where you were born. But who were you named after?
My dad.
Your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And where did he get that name from?
He got that name from Amanda Thompson, because Tony Thompson was his dad, okay? And then I may throw this out there because this is a little historical fact. My dad was only the second son. There's a Tony Thompson Jr., but he died at childbirth. And my dad had 2 older sisters. Nancy Thompson Floyd lived in Kansas City, and she had Roberta Thompson, which is Rosalind Ford's mother. So I want to throw that out there. And then there's Fred, James, after my dad, and Mary.
These are your first cousins.
No, those are all my uncles and aunts.
Uncles and aunts. Okay. So, let's see. Where was your father? He was born in Missouri.
My father, we don't have a birth certificate for him because I think Amanda took them back, and her older children took them back to the reservation. So we have to find, and she probably on the Cheyenne Arapaho reservation is where if we do some digging, but nobody's done any digging there to find out.
Okay. And where was your mother from? She was born in Missouri?
She was born in Fulton, Missouri. She's from Fulton, Missouri. Her people are from Fulton, Missouri, going back generations.
Okay, all the way up to that guy or even further back?
That's not.
That's not, oh, that's on the other side, your dad's side.
Little Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
that was her people,
Okay.
the brown gross. But they had spread out now too, but they originated in Fulton, Callaway County.
Okay, so on your mother's side, were they formerly enslaved people as well?
Henry Gross, far as I know of, and that's about as far back on his side that I go, he owned property. So he was probably about that same time,
The late
90,
1800s?
yeah, like 1890s or 1893. He owned property. He was a landowner. He was a farmer. He had pigs, cows on his farm. So the people in Missouri were like, whether they were tenant farmers at first or not, I haven't got that information. But I just know that we were some of the lucky people that they were landowners, free men owning land for over 100 years.
Oh, nice. And so the information on that family past the late 1800s is unknown, or you just have to dig some more?
Just have to dig some more on it. Okay.
All right. Cool.
Alice Brown married Henry Gross.
So what did your parents do for a living?
Well, now my mother, because women weren't allowed to work, was doing domestic work. Later, she went to where my dad was, working for the state hospital. Okay, and so they were aides at Little League. And then and that's where my dad got his further education, was education on the job, because they had in-house training for the state. And so he moved all the way up to aide 1, aide 2, and aide 3. I had a paper of that, but lost it. And so he was still educating himself, but he started out. Now, my mother only did 2 jobs, and she retired from the mental hospital, a state hospital as they call it. My dad, he worked in the lumber yard when we were renting a house, and we rented that house from one of my mother's aunts, Julia Gross, that lived in Kansas City. That's probably her house. And when her and her husband moved to Kansas City, then we got the house to live in, but it was just renting. So then my father, after renting that house, and he got a good job at Harvest and Walker Brick. So he worked at a brick factory. In fact, my brother later, when he got out of college, he went to work at the brick factory too, because they paid good. But here's the thing. They laid off different times, okay? And if you didn't save money back, being laid off wasn't good for your family. So he followed the footsteps of my dad, went to work for the state hospital too, okay? And he retired from the state hospital. And he's in his 70s now.
Okay, so still around.
Well, see, I got to tell you this story too. Fred passed away at 52. My dad passed away at 54. I looked up the burial certificate after I read the obituary of Mary Thompson Vaughn. She passed away at 54. I said, what in the world is it going on here? So I looked it up. Thompson passed away at age 54. Now his profession was a barber. He was a barber, okay? And so I said, well, I got a hurdle to overcome, and I got to do something about it. I said, I knew Fred and Paul was in the military and they smoked. And probably the government gave them the cigarettes, okay? I said, well, smoking ain't for me. I got to cut that out. That's a no. And so that took care of that hurdle that I didn't at 54 that I had to overcome.
Yeah, break
So
that generational curse of early death. Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm. My father never turned a gray hair in his head. Mm-hmm. But I'm turning gray now a little bit,
A little bit.
and I'm
Salt
proud.
and pepper.
Yeah, and I'm proud of every gray hair I got now.
Yeah. So, a question about how did your parents fall in love?
They were elementary school sweethearts from elementary. I have a picture somewhere of where they were on the 8th grade graduation picture together.
Wow. They've been together for a long time. And do you remember anything that they told you about being kids together?
No, not really. Just that, see, they showed by doing, and they taught us by doing. So Sandra and I, when my mother went to work, we fed the other two. Okay. Now, it wasn't pleasant when they gave us orders to tell them to do something cleaning in the house, because their reply, they didn't tell me to do it. And I got in trouble one time. I got a spanking for trying to make them do it. Where we told them to do it. So that didn't work out either. So we had to tell them, you got to tell them yourself. Wake them up and tell them what you want them to do. Because it couldn't come through Sandra and me, because they ain't following our orders, They little Mr. and Mrs. Independent people.
Yeah.
But we cooked for them, and I came up with a few dishes of my own. And there's one dish that I haven't ever got back to, but y'all to think about, and it's called rice pudding. But you don't serve it as a pudding. You cook it and serve it up like a cereal. But you use the same ingredients, and they say cinnamon is good for your blood pressure anyway.
Oh, definitely some rice pudding sounds delicious. So, did you have any more stories to tell, or can I ask?
Well, now since you asked, since my father was a hunter, he brought home a raccoon one day as a pet. Okay. Now, your mother grew up in a household when we in Kirksville had a rabbit for a pet. A rabbit ran everywhere in the house. Okay. But my dad caught a raccoon. Well, raccoon is like mischievous children. My mother had a pressure cooker going on the stove, and the raccoon over trying to mess with the pressure cooker. Explosion. If you don't let a pressure cooker cool down, it explodes. Well, that was the end of the raccoon living in the house.
Wow. So what happened? Did y'all cook them up or bury them?
Oh, well, I don't know what we did. We were too young to know. I just remember the incident, but we were too young. But we barbecue raccoons all the time. Okay. And that leads to my story. And so I was raccoon hunting with some buddies of mine. Came home with a raccoon. And what you do so you know what you're hunting, you always leave one foot on the animal, and then that way you know what it is. But I put the raccoon in the freezer. I said, and I told your mother, grandmother. I told her, I says, I got a rabbit in there, and we're gonna have to cook that rabbit up sooner or later. Now, your Uncle Michael was living with us at that time. We're still at school, okay, and this is before he got married, okay. So he was living with us and jacking us, okay, and this is before we had any kids. I got to point that out. Your mother wasn't born yet, and so she cooked it up and barbecued it, and she was saying, "This is the best barbecue rabbit I've tasted." and Michael and I just fell out laughing. He couldn't hold it in no longer. So she found out that she had cooked up a raccoon. But now she did cook a possum one time, but she called him a big rat, and so she wouldn't cook no possums. Okay, but no, it was a possum instead of raccoon. It was a possum that she cooked, and I had. We went to a dance. I was in a group of young students. This is med school. I was called the Bachelor Club, so I was part of the Bachelor Club group, and they throw different functions. And outside this party, here comes this possum around. I went to my trunk, got a tie rod out, hit him over the head, threw him in the back of the trunk. You better leave. We're not taking that big rat home. Yeah, but anyway, we cleaned it, and put it in the freezer. Later, when we needed some meat during the winter, I said, "Honey, you better barbecue that rabbit for us." She barbecued it, and that was the best rabbit she ever tasted.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that is funny. So, on the topic of, so I'm just gonna kind of go in orders because you kind of talked about, well, first, actually, let's go back to your childhood. Describe what your childhood was like. What is one of your favorite memories with your siblings?
Okay. Now, we were sort of adventurous a little bit there, and skateboards were coming out about that time, but we couldn't afford a skateboard. So we took, and we used to roller skate. And so we took the roller skate, take them apart, and nailed them to a board. So we made our own skateboard. But the challenge was because we lived here, a neighbor lived here, and there was a hill here coming down, and there's a right turn, 90-degree turn. And so it was a challenge to make the 90-degree turn on a skateboard. And so that was our fun without getting out into the street.
Oh, that's fun.
The other thing is, my mother had Josephine Richmond Cheatham. So she had a different dad than my mother. So Mattie Gross, which is her mother, okay, she had, she was a Cheatham. Then Stanley had a child by her, which is my mother, Irene Marie. And then there was George Coates. And George Coates' dad was John Wesley Coates. And I used to work for him. And that's, so I think Mattie Gross had passed away, and so he remarried to Susie Coates. And Susie Coates is where we get, she said, "Paul, come in here. I'm out there cutting grass. Wash your hands. Sit down at the table." I said, "And I want you to try this." And that's where we get oyster dressing from. Susie Coates.
Yeah, Mom's always making that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I said I thought I'd died, went to heaven that afternoon. She showed me that, and so we've been making it ever since.
That's so nice to know where the family It's called.
Uh-huh.
So now after talking about your childhood, um, you know do well in school, and
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Uh, Now, again, we didn't know we were poor, but Uncle George, when he went off to school, he left his bike at our place. Okay, so this is where our first bike came in. Okay, we're trying to ride his bike. Now, it's a little big for us. And so when you get up on a big boy's bike, you're going to injure something.
yeah,
uh, and that we did, it wasn't for me, because it hits you right in the center. Because first of all, your feet can't touch the
the
ground.
pedal, yeah.
No, can't touch the ground.
So
You can touch the pedal, but you can't touch the ground. To stop, you see, it's too far down, so you land on that bar. But I remember that because see,
sound. Can you stop him? I knew he was gonna try to escape. Well, Layla should. Well,
see, so when you look back at it, uh, with George, John Wesley Coates being George's father, okay, he was my stepfather. Now he had a family, and Susie Coates had a family, okay, and so, but it was a good time because we didn't look at him as a step grandfather, but he was a grandfather, and he was one of the person that hired me, to do his yard for him because he got up in age and he had diabetes, and one of his legs was cut off at the time.
So he couldn't.
So he became bedridden. And see, when people couldn't do stuff, it was me.
Yeah.
See, so they started hiring me, and that's the same with Irma and Ben Ray. They was living next to Alice Brown Gross and Henry Gross out at Little Kansas City, and so they hired me to do their yard. Okay, and I got to tell you about Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben, because Irma was Alice's sister. They were sisters, and they lived next to each other. And so every time he'd come down the street, now he didn't have a car. Every time he'd come down, he walked everywhere. And so every time he'd come down the street, he would throw me a silver dollar. Oh, yeah. He made me happy. And see, he already done paid me for cutting his grass. But when he passed me, because I did him a favor, he tossed me a silver dollar. So I guess he made sure he had a silver dollar in his pocket because he knew I was going to be out on the street playing, and he'd throw me a silver dollar. Yeah.
So the next part I want to talk about is how you met your wife, Grandma. What was your first impression of her? When did you first see her?
Well, now I'm going to tell you that our stories are different, okay? But I gave her.
Well, what's your impression? Because I'll ask her.
Well, I'm going to give you my story. This ain't her story. I was running a club on Wednesday nights, and I still got the stereo where you open it up and you got the dancing lights and stuff, and people just listen to the music, chill out, before the weekend came. And so I threw a party on the weekend, and I think she came to that party, but I didn't know she came to that party. I didn't meet her. I'm running. If it's in my house, you got to do certain things,
Be a host.
Yeah, you got to be a host, okay? Well, later on, I got to say, Michael was living with me there. Mona was living. Okay, this apartment had two sides. The landlord was going to rent me 2 rooms, and the bathroom was between the 2 units. The bathroom was between the 2 units. I said, oh no, I can't share no bathroom with nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so I'm going to rent both sides. I rent the whole upper floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I had 2 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, and a bathroom between. Okay, but there's a kitchen in each living room. So it's sort of like a efficiency apartment. And so I made this room over here in front of my bedroom a living room. The other one in front of the other bedroom was kitchen. So we kept that the kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms. So Mona lived, well, let me tell you this. Mona and Michael were living in the dorms. Mom and Dad came to me and said, this is too much. We can't afford them living it. 'Cause now they got three people in college, okay? And I don't know where Sandra was. Sandra went to KU, came back. Then she was going to Lincoln, but she got a kid now, okay, from her first marriage. And so she is going to Lincoln, and that's where she met Harold Johns, going to Lincoln too, okay? So they hook up, They both graduated from Lincoln, moved to find a job up in Michigan because Rosalind and Charles say, come on up here because they pay good. And they do pay good in Michigan, okay? So I was, well, the other person that came back was my dean of pledge from Kappa. And it's Jerome Walker. He became the dean of Rutgers University, okay? He got his master's. He came back for his master's, okay? And so 4 of us living together. Jerome, me, Michael, and Mona, okay? Now, Michael and Jerome, they just have to kick it wherever they can kick it, okay? But not in my bedroom and not in Mona's bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, they just kicked out, probably made a pallet or something, okay? Then after that had broken up, well, Drew and I, we was on this blend, so I did regress a little bit. And we were trying some different blends of tobacco. We was pipe smokers.
Hold on a second. You looking for the bathroom key? Which one? It's the big square one. You know what I'm talking about? Big square one.
And so anyway, Jerome and I, we're trying different blends in the student union. Sitting there smoking, just the 2 of us, we had a class, and I'm out of class and he's out of class. Now Jerome also headed our black student union people. He formed a black group, okay, back to that same separate the men from the women, you see, and we're proactive, you see. We were doing sit-ins and stuff like that at the college. But we didn't do one, planned it. And lucky we didn't because they had the police ready for us. Yeah. But we took over the administration building one time and one other thing. So they knew we were getting really organized. But it was Jerome. Well, see, I had the Kappas, there was lawyers. We had Bert Ollie, he was a administrator. We had a couple of lawyers that were on this group, okay? So these lawyers were active people, They wanted to do something. They want to make things better for us on campus. And so, they did, But anyway, Jerome and I were sitting there smoking our pipes, trying different blends. Okay, what's going to be the best blend so you can look good and enjoy it too. And here comes this lady walking around, because people eat at the student union. She walked over. Now, there was other places to sit. I can't find a place to sit. Can I sit with y'all? Now, this is my story. She'll tell it different though. But That's the first time seen her. Okay, so she sat down next to us. I got a name and number. Okay, and I had a party the next day. Now, I belong to two organizations. The Atlas Club, okay, was a men's organization on our campus, social group, and Bachelor Club, but she didn't know nothing about the Bachelor Club until later. And so the Atlas Club, your atlas is right back here, the head of your cervical spine. And so that's what this club was named. And so we went and partied at the Atlas Club. Turned out pretty good. She was all decked out. And my buddy Jerome, he had a Triumph. He came back with a sports car. So our first date was in a Triumph sport car, no roof, convertible. And so it was a good time. And we started seeing each other off and on then.
Nice. What was your wedding day like?
I thought it was fantastic because here's what we did. I told my future wife we could not go on a honeymoon right away. We had to wait a week until I was out of school. Okay? And so we had planned it in Mobley. And my brother was going to be my best man. And I had all three of my.
Hold on, sorry.
Okay. I had all three of my. For this wedding, I had all three of my partners. Minnie Gordon, Larry Shockley, and I stayed at both their houses over some summers, okay? But Larry Shockley's house the most, off of Natural Bridge. And then Stanley Jones, okay? And then Michael Pemberton, one of my high school running buddies, was there, and he helped to usher my mother and stuff in, and her mother in. And so we planned this to be in Mobley, but we wasn't staying in Mobley. In fact, when Jackie threw the garter, my brother caught the garter. And so my mother was shocked that her other son is getting engaged at my wedding. And so that was the first shock, okay? And then we were dressing at the hotel, and I told the men, well, don't check in because we're not staying here. We're going, I had rooms at the Roadway Inn in St. Louis, okay? And they had a bridal suite for us. But we didn't stay there very long. We just checked in, and we're partying. Helen's Black Eagle is where we spent the night jamming and it was a jazz up and coming place, you see. Plus, I like the name, and it was us, you see. And so it was really good. But then here's the thing: I came back. We went to school. I had gotten a GTO that fall. Okay, and so I had this GTO, and I got this GTO somewhere. I got this GTO and pictures of me on Daytona Beach with my big afro and my dashiki on. I got to find it. I found it. I should have put it away, and I lost it again. But we went to Florida. We went to Disneyland. I took your grandmother to Disneyland for our honeymoon. And so it's Christmas time, and they got these big Christmas tree bulbs like this. I mean, these are huge, And so we had a pretty good time, and then we went over to the coast of the ocean. Jackie really hadn't been in the ocean, and so one wave came, it went over her head. Second wave came, it went over her head too. So I said, I better get over here close to her because she's drowning. So we had a good time on the beach, but we never seen. At Daytona, you got 4-lane traffic on the beach. So that was sort of we had to move our stuff either down closer or up further, so the cars could go by on the beach.
So, thank you for sharing your story with your wedding and your honeymoon. So, describe the first time you became a father with my mom. What was that like?
This is interesting too. See, you got to understand that I was at a teaching hospital, okay, and teaching school, and so when you see them old rooms where there's a dome up here over the surgical room and there's windows, so her parents and my parents got to see their first childbirth. But now she wasn't facing them. She was facing away to the doctor. So they just seen the baby come out, basically, and probably seen him tie the cord off. Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't, it was, but it wasn't,
Yeah, it wasn't too graphic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think both parents was happy about that.
Were you in the room or were you there?
No, I was in the room.
You were in the room? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I was in the room.
Were you holding Grandma's hand or what were you saying to her?
That's beyond my memory now. I just remember the circumstance.
So what do you remember when Mom came out? Do you remember what you were thinking or what she looked like when she was a little baby?
No, I was just overlaid with joy. Okay. And later, my friend, he had broken up with his girlfriend, and she was going back to Samoa. And so I said, well, no, this happened before she went into surgery. Okay. This was before I had to help him drive to California. Okay. So he could get on a ship and go to American Samoa to get his wife. She's still out there in Hawaii, I think. And he's with some other woman now. I don't know if they divorced or not, but he had a child by her. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get along. And it was a situation where sometime I was his wingman. And so he was trying to get me to go with some of her girlfriends, but I didn't. Yeah. Okay. But I was glad to make it back because we got stranded, had an accident. Okay, and that's what Clifton found out. I had an accident out in New Mexico. Went off the road. It blew us off the road and into the ravine. But they had this thing in the ravine, so we hit the ravine and the car flipped in the air. So the car was flying in the air upside down. What saved us, it was a Carmen Ghia sports car. What saved us, he had his big trunk in the back seat. So that weight of the car made the car turn down like this, hit that first, and then land like that. Otherwise, if it hit like that, we'd have been dead. Okay. Now, wasn't nothing wrong with me, but he had a bloody lip. But the guy who came up there and stopped, he said, man, I just knew somebody was dead in this car, with the car flying. So I could have passed away before your mother was even born. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, praise God that you still live.
Yeah.
So, that was your first child. So then, years later, you have 4 kids. What's that like for you? You had 4 children.
Well, there was a big controversy in our house. Loandra wanted another girl. she opened the door for Paul being able to tease her, because he was going up and down the steps. We're having a boy. We're having a boy. And just making her mad.
So she never got her sister.
Yeah, never got her sister. And so, anyway, now comes the task. What do you do with 3 boys? You get them in programs, you get them in sports, and you participate with them. Of course, I was Booster Club president for the arts, because Paul and Loangelo and Lorica were in band. And so I was Booster Club president for a while. Then I was Weeblo's leader in Boy Scouts. Okay. And then, Cub Scouts, and then Boy Scouts came, and we did a lot of campouts. They learned how to make fire. They learned how to shoot, like your brother now. He went to special camp, and he learned how to shoot a bow and arrow.
Oh, archery, nice.
Yes.
Okay, so then in the 90s, you became a grandpa. What was that like?
Well, we jumped ahead a little too quick.
Oh, okay.
Because all my buddies were Kappas in the wedding. Mm-hmm. Okay, plus my brother was a Kappa too by that time. And that's what made college so fun for me. Okay. And, well, my first apartment off of campus was with a black man who had a looked like a garage, but it wasn't a garage. It was between the garage and the house, and so it was like an extra room. So my room and board was $25 a month. But I had everything in there. I had my little kitchen in there. I had my bedroom in there, and it was sort of a wood paneling type stuff. And I had bought, because I had worked for the prison in Jeff City during the summer, so I had bought. Well, they never did let me take my car to college. They wouldn't allow freshmen to have it. So by the time I got around to being a junior, I had bought another car. It was one of those Chevys that got the wings that go out this way, tinted, $400 and some odd dollars. And that car had glass packs on it. Womp, 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 womp. Going down, when you're slowing down. But then I had this buddy. He wasn't, I don't think he was supposed to be in school, but he worked for the railroad, and so he was collecting unemployment, so I had to run him down to get his unemployment check and then come back to school. Blew the engine out of that car. But the guys had passed away who sold me the car, and his wife wanted the car back. She paid me as much as I paid for the car in the first place, and I told her, the engine is blown out of it. She don't care. It was his car, and she wanted it back. So let her have it.
Well, you made money back.
Made money back.
Value.
And rode it for a whole year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was before Grandma. And then I moved closer to campus. Is when I got this apartment. And well, I had just moved, I think, in the summer, and then that's when my parents told me that they couldn't afford for Mona and Michael to live in the dorm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think they bought them lunch tickets. I don't know how that worked out. Okay. But I had a rule. Anybody living in my house, you got to take a turn at cleaning up
the place, yeah.
The kitchen.
The kitchen.
Yeah. Okay. And so anyway, that worked out pretty good. Okay, because your grandmother was my kitchen help. Everybody got their own kitchen help, and so that's how that worked out. And so she's hanging around me, of course, which I didn't know. her parents didn't have food for her to eat in the dorms. So she also hung around me because there was always food at my house. Mm. Still today, God has blessed me that there's always food in my house. Okay, and I was gonna, if Lee had stopped by, I was gonna let y'all pick out. We got 2 big boxes of canned goods. Let y'all pick some canned goods that y'all might want. Okay, so if one of y'all take me home, you might want to pick out a few things in there. Okay, so you always have something in them. But now when you bring them over here, you need to date them. Make sure, always use the older ones first. Rotate, and so I like that little place. I bought a shag carpet. That shag carpet came in handy. It was a little more, had more little tinsels. Well, they about that long. And after I left that apartment, Mona got that rug. She wanted that rug. And I had these orange bright foam chairs. I mean, they didn't sit quite this high, but they were comfortable chairs, sort of like this couch.
Yeah.
But it was all foam.
That sounds
But
fun.
they were,
One of those bubble chairs from the 90s.
yeah.
So is there any more stories you want to share from your college days?
From my college days. Oh, okay. So my BFF is what you call him, Gordon. He wanted to go to Acapulco, and so he got a buddy from St. Louis that he run around with, named Maynard, and then he had me. I said, "Yeah, I'm up for going. I help drive." Okay, and so we took out for Acapulco, and so we got down into Texas. So I won. This is still before your grandmother. And I had dated a young lady over homecoming. And we stopped at the World Hemisphere in San Antonio, Texas, down on what they call a Galleria or something like that. And I won a teddy bear, so I got to give her a teddy bear. See, now, here's the thing about when you're dating women and you go to a fair, you only have to win one teddy bear in your life, okay? For because they're so big, okay? And I was out at Adventureland, and we couldn't, for some reason it was raining something, so we got stuck in this one little corner, and I won a tiger. The tiger's this big, stands this tall, and you could only put them on the bed, and so your grandmother got a tiger out of me. Okay. Well, then now they got a problem of where to put the tiger. What you do with a tiger that big?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's a fun story. Okay, so now, so what was it like becoming a grandfather?
You were my first grandchild. We were a little protective of your still grandparents. God, we wanted to see you. We wanted to be around you. So, and y'all lived in Ames. Where were you born, in Ames?
I was born here in Des Moines.
Oh.
But Mom says that they lived in Ames and then drove all the way to Des Moines to give birth.
Yeah,
I was born at Mercy Hospital.
Yeah, you got lucky then. Not like a Lord, they didn't make it to the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was a fun time. Well, we have enjoyed all our grandkids, And so we we didn't enjoy when y'all moved away. He was taking you to Atlanta for a while, you know.
We were in Mississippi and
Yeah.
Texas and other places.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then we came back.
Y'all,
Is that
no, wait
picture-
a minute. You never was in Texas.
No.
But that's another story that ain't gonna be on film.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
But we came back to you guys because I remember there's a picture hanging up in the house with me, Denasa, and Alora wearing these little red Christmas dresses.
Yes.
You, Grandma.
Yes. It's because things wasn't working out in Holly Springs, and we had already made. I had dropped off a washer and dryer for your mother to use because of y'all, and so we had headed back, and we was out we was in St. Louis. We had made it back up to St. Louis, and Grandma got the call from your mother saying, "Will you come and pick the three of y'all up? Otherwise, the state was going to take you." And so we came back and got you and fattened y'all up for that Christmas, and you looked pretty good. Your father at that time was not feeding y'all properly. Mm. And so the state was on his case. But we enjoyed having y'all, big family again, you know. Everybody gone but y'all, you know, because Clutton was at Iowa State or wherever he was, okay. Paul was at Drake. Lorenco was at the Art Institute in Chicago. Now, he wanted to go to this school in Savannah, but once he got there, I said, I don't mind you going where you want to go. I'll take you, but we're going to go there and take a look at it first. He didn't like it, even though his buddy was going there. And so I said, well, let's head on up to Chicago. They've been writing you, asking you to come there. And he had put a portfolio package together, and he got the presidential scholarship at the Art Institute in Chicago. But he didn't stay with it. He got into the world versus just doing what he needed to do on campus. Mm.
Yeah.
And, you know, Chicago's a busy place, and you can get involved in a lot of stuff. But he might have had his degree if he stayed there. I lost track of what we were.
Yeah, so, because I said that all three of us, me, you know, your first three grandchildren had come to live with you guys back in Iowa.
Grandma was just jumping with joy.
Yeah. Were we going to daycare or something?
Yes, we had a good friends. Him and I was in scouting together. Your mother and her were friends, the Golfries. And so she was running a little daycare, and she took y'all to the little daycare. And that's where Laura became a tomboy. She's wrestling. She had another little boy there, and she wrestled with the little boy, you know, become a tomboy. But they lived right around down the street.
Oh, yeah, just around the corner. I think I remember that, yeah.
Down the street.
So my question to you now is, now that, you know, you have currently how many grandchildren?
9.
Yeah. So you have 9 grandchildren now. How has it been now being a great-grandfather?
Well, I can tell you this, and I've said this time and time again. When you're little, you're the cheapest you're ever going to be. And having grandkids and great-grandkids, grandma's always got a project.
So how do you feel, you know, internally, having been able to live to see 3 generations of descendants bear forth from you?
Well, see, now I don't give too many advices, but every once in a while I have to. Just like this, it's time to look at your education, okay? And what I'm trying to get Raleigh to see, yes, she's home with 2 babies right now, but what about 5 to 6 years from now? If you work on one subject at a time, don't overload yourself, you know, you get to that point, okay? And maybe you need they'll tell you to get to that doctorate, you need another master's in administration, okay? So maybe it's time to get the master's on board. Right now, everybody's doing online. So they expect people to do things online, okay? But you got to carve out that time that's going to put you ahead because you're not doing it right now, okay? And I got that article on my phone, but without having glasses, I can't see it. But I already sent it to Clifton, because Clifton's got his master's, okay? And then I'm telling him, okay, if he don't want to do this same job that he's doing right now, and your uncle's, and he's making big money, but it ain't enough. He's making 100,000, but it ain't enough.
Yeah.
Okay, he's living in one of the counties that the housing rate is 17% higher than the other counties in Florida. I mean, I seen a house down the street just because it had a pool, but that don't make it a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a normal house, and they sell it for $500,000. You know, so I'm saying if you don't want to be doing, you got to look at the future, and you got to work toward the future. And I'm telling Layla, don't stop until you get your doctorate. You know, once you get going, go. But you can't stop and let life and the boyfriend stop you from getting there. Okay? Now, non-parental support, that's a different matter. Okay, my dad came across it. I came across it. Okay? Sometimes, but what I should have done was, as soon as I remedied the situation, got back into it. Or let the school know I'm going to lay out for a semester. See, I did not let them know anything, that I'm in and out of town. You know, sometimes I can't make class. You see, I should have let them know what was going on with me. Okay.
Okay, so, what do you consider? So maybe this can be towards the end now. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
It's going to be that I kept the family together. Okay. My dad's brothers and sisters. His sister, older sister people too. But we all know each other. You know, today you don't even know who your cousins are. Okay. Oh, there you go. Whoa! Look at you! Look at you!
Hold on a second. Hey, Layla. Lee, one of you guys. The baby is loose.
And see, people are losing properties, but I still got my dad's property. 4 of us own it, you know, but we still got my dad's property. You see, and all this turmoil and stuff that's going on, we still got the property. You see, and we got the property next to it. Okay, which is where the house is, and my sister's remodeling that house right now, just putting a new furnace and stuff in it, and it's sort of Victorian type. I see. You're gonna be a dancer.
Hold on a second. Oh, Layla, come get the baby and change his diaper. It's sitting at the bottom of his outfit. I don't even think his diaper His diaper's not even on his behind anymore.
I wasn't watching this whole time.
Grab him. He literally just interrupted the video. Okay, change his diaper.
Did you stop it?
No, I didn't stop it.
Mhm.
I just let him keep going. I think it's cute because then there'll be a little clip of you picking him up. So, okay, so continue what you're saying. Sorry for the interruption.
Well, I consider that one of the biggest accomplishments, so that the family knows who they are. Now we're getting ready to go into phase 2 of the family, okay? And I'm setting up a council. Now the council is for the older adults that they're not going to hold any offices, okay, or held an office, and now the council becomes a advisory board to the president, okay, and then there's going to be different people holding different offices, but you have to use the teacher's model, okay. If you don't have any teachers, you have to grow them in-house. If you don't have any leaders, you have to grow your leaders in-house. And so that means if there's a treasurer position, there's a recorder's position, there's a historian position, okay, and there's a planning committee, okay. Well, you have one chairman, and then you have at least 2 people under him. So these 2 people are sort of learning what to do when it's their time to be chairman, okay? And from these committee people, that's how you elect your president, you know? It's from these people who's going to head up a committee, you see? You know, everybody maybe want to be a president, but do you have the experience to be a president? Can you do the job that's necessary? Well, if you ran a committee, then you might be qualified for this job. There's always going to be something you haven't come across, okay, on it for you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that ideas and advice. So the final question is, this is slightly different from the last question, but it might sound the same, but it's different. What is the legacy and values that you want to leave behind for your descendants and for the descendants that haven't been born yet? Okay.
When you look at leadership and people, they want to take an initiative. They want to be part of something. Well, you're the most important to your family. Family is, again, a number one. And then educating the family. And I would like for my daughter to head up one thing. She's already worked for a mortgage company. We want to own our land, and that is your first step of getting out of poverty. If you own your land, okay, and we got to teach you how to keep the land once you own the land. Okay, we want to. A lot of stuff is going on out here about your land. So that's one step out of poverty. Education and owning your own land is the key. You can always get equity out of your land. That's one of the biggest things you should do, own your land.
Oh, great.
Or do like Monopoly. Move from houses to hotels.
Get commercial real estate. Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that is all the questions that we have for this interview. And what we want to do for the next part is, once I get this video together, I'll show some people and maybe ask your children or some other, family members or whatever, if they have any questions, and I'll have them send me questions, and we'll come back, do it again later if we can, and get some more. Because I was just thinking, I was like, I bet Uncle Cliff would want to, be a part of this and ask questions too, and the others. But I think I asked, all the important questions. So is there anything else that you want to say before we end this?
Well, life is always unfolding. We made it through the pandemic. Now it's for us to plan a path to do bigger and better things. Education may be that thing that would help us.
Awesome. Great. Well, that is